Welcome back for more. Holy smokes, what a week. Had some fun. We missed you last week. We had Howard Greenberg from the QM fill in, but we came up with some pretty cool stuff, and then I'll kind of go over one other thing I want to talk about with the wheel trade stuff towards the end of the broadcast if you guys stay tuned. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate you liking and subscribing and telling your friends, and we're here to help. And if we get more people tuning in, it just makes us feel better about helping more people. We truly enjoy it. Our hearts are in the same place. We love to help people.
It makes us feel better about ourselves.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. So we get something out of it in return, and that's joy. Yeah. We love it. So man, it's been pretty hectic since last week, and now we've got a lot of earnings coming out this week that are going to kind of corner the market until we see a trend start to develop. So this week for like QQQ, it's been fairly flat and rangy, but we're expecting some bigger moves outside of this. And then we got the election, and things are going kind of nuts. So I got DJT on the board now, and man, that would have been a great opening short right in the liquidity zone this morning, right down to the halfback target. Now we're looking bullish again, but we're thinking it's going to kind of dry up as the election cracks on and maybe become a sell the, buy the rumor, sell the news type of thing. If he wins, just kind of running that. But then it stays probably pretty volatile whether he wins or loses, because it's always going to be something coming out of Trump, right? So you're considering a leveraged ETF on this bad boy.
We are. I've been considering it for a while. Been trying to talk my partners into it, and finally yesterday they were like, "Yeah, all right, let's go." So, I mean, now we got to get swap exposure on it. So we'll see about that. But if anyone saw Trump's Madison Square Garden speech, Howard Lutnick, the CEO of Cantor, was one of the speakers, and Cantor is one of our major swap counterparties. So I'm hoping that that Howard gives us the go ahead. On DJT, couple of things. I mean, what you're seeing is most likely either a gamma squeeze, a short squeeze, a bit of both. Watch 53.92. That's the May 31 high. It failed there this morning. They're going to want to try to push it through if they're bullish. And as you said, watch for a buy the rumor, sell the news if Trump wins. I would expect this to sell off. If Trump loses, I expect this to eventually go to zero. So, just be very, very careful. If Trump loses, it's hard to justify this company's existence. It's hard enough if he wins.
Right.
They've got to execute, but they have a chance if he wins. If he loses, they don't. Those looking for more upside up until the election. I mean, again, gamma squeeze, short squeeze, anything can happen. But, love or hate Trump, he does have a ceiling, and it's hard to see, or hard to imagine new news coming out over the next week that's more positive for Trump than what we've already seen.
I can agree. And then, chart wise, I mean, we've pretty much achieved every goal we wanted. And then we know this liquidity zone is pretty easy to spot here. Just look for the big wicks on top of them candles. It points it right out. I mean, if you can't see that, yeah, you need to get your eyes checked. But we went right up to it this morning and even blasted through a little bit into it. And then we rejected cleanly, came back for the half back on the current trend. And if you look at, your basic measured move structure here, I'm going to start from the range here. I mean, we've met that and then some. We got a 1.5 up to that move, plain as day. I'm not even going to put the box on there because this thing's so volatile. It's quick action. You can see here, primary accumulation, secondary 1.5, done. And then we wicked right back into half this trend pretty quickly, right down to the 43 and some change. Volatility, yeah, it's golden. And then in the scenario where if he loses and this thing eventually fades to zero, I mean, I know leverage ETFs can be a hit or a miss, but the 2x long would be obviously an issue unless you shorten it. But the 2x exposure to the downside.
That's why I want both sides.
Right.
I want both sides of this trade. Even if he does win, I mean, the business model of Truth Social kind of went out the window the moment Elon took over X.
You know,
So, they're going to have to do some more stuff to make this a viable company.
yeah, it definitely kicked the relevance right out of it once
Yeah.
Elon took over X.
I
And
mean, now Truth Social is like Threads. I mean, I signed up for Threads. I don't use it. I don't have time for it.
yeah,
One social media site is all I can handle.
same. I've got like 3 of them I got to deal with, and that's way too much. So I'm always
Yeah.
busy juggling stuff. So yeah, I know what you mean. And as for price
If you
action,
are, wait, so I was just going to say, if you are looking for a real Trump trade with substance, it's GEO. Prison company, all sorts of Trump policies play right into what these guys do. And the first Trump term, they were much higher. I stupidly sold when they switched out Biden for Kamala. I have not gotten back in. My sense is that if Trump does win, it will take the institutions long enough to position that there'll be an entry point in names like this, which is why I have not jumped back in.
yeah, it's kind of a risk anyway. I mean, just looking at the daily chart here, it's a pretty obvious triple top in play unless it wedges, and we got the potential to wedge, but
Yeah, I mean the time to buy was beginning of October, and I missed it. I'm not going to chase it.
yeah. Chase is a bank. It's not a strategy.
Yeah.
We preach that all the time over at the BB. Effectively, I'm gonna watch this wedge though. I think this will give us potentially a decent trade in the near future. Just for now, it's kind of just gonna range and do its thing for a little while. My puppies are starting to get rambunctious. Figured they would. But essentially, this would be a better trade after the fact than DJT would either way. I mean, in this case, so. But if you get 2x exposure to the downside of this thing going to 0, that you could bank on that. That'd be really cool. Yeah, potentially, I would love to get involved in a 2x leverage on something like this. For now, I've just been scalping it. Running the options chain has been pretty lucrative for me.
Yep.
I've been kind of playing whack-a-mole with it on the way up because I can catch some really quick day trade scalps on puts kind of on the way. Long term, yeah, it's been bullish and parabolic. It hit our target pretty well. So if you wanted to be, a longer term bull on this thing, if you could stand the amount of volatility crush as well as the fairly high rate of decay on these things, you could have gone with calls up to this point. But for me, it just was much more lucrative to just day trade the puts and sometimes day trade the calls and just rinse repeat type of situation. I don't really want to hold this overnight. I don't think anybody does. So for now, I think the trend down and half back is done on that. The half back test has been done, so we're pretty much just neutral until this thing breaks. Sorry, I gotta yell at the puppy.
That doesn't sound like a puppy.
Yeah, she's still a puppy. She's gonna be a big dog when she finally does grow up. But for now, she's gonna do puppy things. And then her brother, as we call him, because he's also adopted from a different breed. They play and they get to pretty rambunctious. Love them. Nice. I call them my risk management team. When they get rowdy and I got to walk away from my computer, I go flat, and it usually works out good. So I call them the risk management team. They're doing their job. Moving on from DJT, so we can get out of the political muck. There's a couple other trades going on that have just been flying. Not to toot my own horn and break my arm, pat myself on the back, but dude, that's that Lightbridge trade. Oh wow! We have one more that we're gonna talk about right after this. That's kind of playing along with this kind of volatility. But let me get into this thing for a minute. That kind of parabolic doesn't come but rarely, and man, this thing is just insane. I still have
and it's the power of the AI energy theme. You've got people massively chasing any name in that sector. So it's been great, and it was also great that we got this early.
Oh, for real.
I
And
just actually I talked to a hedge fund guy a couple of days ago. He's like, "Yeah, I think I've got something that's going to be the next great thing." He's like, AI power generation. I'm like, okay.
we've been on that for
We were
months.
on that like a month or so ago.
Yeah, at least 6 weeks ago. I think we've
Yeah.
started talking about it actually like almost 2 months ago. We were starting to get into it. I mean, that's about where our dope begins anyway. And I still have my medium term analyst target on it, or self proclaimed analyst target on it, at about 1275. It's right there, one full move up, and it's just chugging right along. This thing, it's nuts. I got a little bit short term on this thing, and I got my goal. I'm happy with my trades. Getting the half back on this thing was pretty obvious, and then back to bull mode, and I'm still long now. I think I'm going to probably set my limit order today to get out at 1275, to be honest. But I'm going to take some profit there and wait for the next move, of course. But this thing can go a little higher than that. I mean, we've seen it hit, ATH over here. Well, medium term ATH, if you call it that. 1460 here's a peak. You get back into time on this thing, and it's been around a while, but it has had a couple of reverse splits, so you got to be kind of cautious when you see those. But for now, the short-term, medium-term target's pretty obvious, pretty easy to see. Going forward, this thing will be a bit of a risk above that number, I think, but I could be wrong. I think that we're just seeing the beginning stages of the potential demand on nuclear energy that AI is going to produce. Far beyond this thing could just trend forever. Just remember that market can be irrational with this thing much longer than you can be liquid. So my short-term target's pretty valid. In the meantime, take a little caution when you get above this line. I think we're going to see some consolidation that'll broaden that range a bit before we either see continuation or capitalization. So, be nimble. Another one you were talking about, let me go back into your side here. Was it was it EQT? No, which was the other one that we were looking at?
Yeah. So let me step back for a minute. So the themes we've been on, especially AI power, have just been insane. The flip side of that is those are all extended. And I think there are times where you look at something like this and say it's a generational opportunity, and it doesn't matter that it's extended, but you've got massive earnings this week. You've got the FOMC, you've got the election, you've got all sorts of stuff that's all binary, that nobody knows A, what's going to happen, and B, how the market's going to react. So I personally don't want to be buying extended things now. I would rather wait. So I'm looking at areas. All right, what's not extended? I still love the natural gas piece of the AI power generation theme. So EQT is a name that's not extended. It's kicking around support at the 200-day. So that's something in that theme that I think you could buy today.
I mean, it's got the look of potentially forming up for a nice measured move play, and we can target pretty easy on that. And I'm going to look left and grab a couple pivots too from the left, but so far it's just about finished consolidating in this range here around the $36, $37 mark, and potentially we could see a play. Let's see here, we got like 39 and an extension up here like 41.50. Pretty easy to see. That's about the previous high there. So there's some liquidity up here, right across the top of our box, or a little extended. And I'm going to look a little further left. Pulling up a weekly chart, you can see that that's kind of a mid-range for what is potentially a much higher move up into the 50s. So I kind of like this setup. This is one that we can pretty much repeat very, very easily. As choppy as this chart seems, that's about where you can find some method to the madness, so to speak. Plus, this is a bit of a descending channel, and typically they like to return to these mean targets pretty readily. So potentially this is a pretty good trade here. And we just need to wait and make sure this range breaks and gives us the trend up above these previous highs and continue chugging. For now, short term, we can range it a little bit here. And we can see lastly, there's liquidity right about here. So let's look for a break above 37.50 to give us the go signal on this thing to go long. And then pretty obvious range from there. I like the setup on that. Natural gas is kind of due for a bit of a bounce back. I mean, should I pull up the Widowmaker chart?
Well, now, and one thing you can do, so I love the natural gas companies as far as, AI power generation. UNG is structurally flawed.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's futures based and you have the contango. So, one of the things I talk about in the heat formula is edges, the E. And some of those edges are structural. All the VIX ETPs are the ones that are really bad. And as an aside, one thing you're going to want to do looking at the election, post-election, is play for a vol crush and have puts on the VIX ETPs. But one thing I do on UNG is I've got a couple of trend following models where I'll have puts on UNG to take, you've got trend following, in, kind of as somewhat of an edge stacked on top of the edge that UNG is just, crap. And that could also be a way to hedge some of these names, like EQT is another name I own.
I mean, I remember making some killer trades in like 21 and 22 on this thing. They were bullish trades, and they did very, very well. But should I have stayed short on this thing? Yeah, because this is fatally flawed. You're right. It just absolutely is intent on going to zero. And you can see that trend. Every time it hits that angular resistance there, you just short it and do well. So we got one more going. And currently we have an MM target probably down here around $11. So I like shorting this thing. But yeah, it's just not an index you want to follow. You'd rather go with the names. So if you unpack it and figure out, where the companies are, that's probably gonna be your better bet. One we like to see on the East Coast. Oh, dang it. It's a one-letter ticker too, and I can't remember it. It'll come back to me. But I've made a few trades on an article that they put out, during that 21-22 period, where they were looking at natural gas futures, and they were predicting that the consumer end of it was going to see prices double going into the winter of 21 and 22, and they put that article out in like June, so I went long on UNG and I nailed it. It was pretty easy. Yeah. You kind of pay attention to what those energy companies are saying, because I mean they've been in business, selling this commodity for long enough to where, yeah, you get the idea. They know what they're doing, So it's much more kind of accurate to just make trades on the utilities themselves rather than try and play off the indexes, especially when it's just UNG. It's the Widowmaker. They don't call it the Widowmaker for nothing. It will absolutely devastate your portfolio, and it won't take long. Sorry, this dog's knocked my phone over. I just want to make sure they don't chew it in half. And then there's some moves in China you were talking about too. I mean, we got Baidu and Baba and a couple others rolling around.
Yeah, so those guys all got totally extended, but it looks like they found support. So if you look at Baba, it came down pretty close to the 50-day and bounced. And, China's announcing more stimulus. Yeah, I'd be, this is not, the AI energy theme, but, this is something where, if China's going whole hog on stimulus, I think it's an area it can't hurt to have some exposure to. So I added to my Baba and Baidu this morning.
If they came out with news saying, "Hey, we're going to abolish the one child per family rule," instant growth. Reversion target was pretty obvious. Market structure looks about right for them to come out with some sort of news like that. So hey, it's looking like a good reversion trade series. And then if we get long on this trend, we could see a return to like 109 here for Baba on a short medium term. And then if we get really swifty, we could even see a push to 124 pretty easily. Just kind of measuring this as our primary move and then stack it onto the consolidation point. No. Oh, I stand corrected. Let's go for 130. Kind of a nice setup. And then the halfway point would be, where are we at? About 115. Cool. Watch the setup. Watch this accumulation in this range. Give us a break above 102 and it's game on, baby. I like it. Good setup. And then it lines right up with the previous trend. So, yeah, breakout target's pretty easy. Could we see China do even more? I mean, what if, they decided, okay, well, we're not going to, take over, Taiwan and maybe we'll make some peace with that. That's a possibility, I mean, from what I understand, most of the threat to take over Taiwan anyway was just, it seemed like a bunch of saber rattling to the rest of the world. So
yeah, I'd be careful there. So one of our funds, which I never talk about, but it's pretty cool, is NSI. And NSI is emerging markets with no Chinese military companies. And the guy who runs it is ex-military. He's connected up the yin yang. He actually just did a
no pun
webinar on
intended.
the fund. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He just did a webinar on the fund like last week, and he had some big wig national security guy on who, and I forget the exact timeline, but he's like, yeah, China will be boots on the ground in Taiwan within like 18 months.
Oh, wow. So they're,
And and I'll go to things that investment banks will host, and they'll have guys who know stuff, and they all say it's not if, it's when.
okay. So maybe that is,
Now let's see if a Trump presidency changes that. I mean,
right.
Trump says, "Hey, if I'm in, no one will do anything." We'll see. But everyone that I hear from says the same thing. It's not if, it's when.
It kind of seems to me, I mean, that his last term basically put that on the back burner and sort of kicked the can down the road with that whole situation anyway. So, yeah, it makes sense that we would see some more aggression during the current administration. And then, yeah, if he's in office again, it just delays things again. So you're right. I think you're onto something when you say it's not an if, it's a when. But it's,
Which is why I personally don't buy usually Taiwan semi.
yeah.
Sometimes to my detriment, but
TSM, I mean, it's always a good trader, but yeah, you got to be cautious with that one. And it's like there's plenty of better things to trade than TSM, in my opinion. But don't ignore it. I mean, I've traded TSM before and did very well. It's just a matter of being very frugal with your position sizes on that one because it can get you. There's my dope from the past back here. Played a nice measured move and could have went for another one. And yeah, it's been pretty nice with price action until you see stuff like this massive gap here that's just about to fill, kind of likely to hit 191 again. You got to kind of pick what you trade. It's not always about what you trade; it's more about how you trade it. But this is one of those ones where there's plenty of better things to trade. I agree with you there. Another mention was going back, you've got kind of an idea, and there's one ASML I think was kind of trending along the bottom here, but we're looking for a reversal. That's not necessarily a theme you want to wholeheartedly focus on, but it's getting close to time to see this thing move.
yeah.
I know the idea on that was for a reversion trade, but subject with that, it's like, we got plenty of better things to do until we wait for this thing to happen. But the other one that you were talking about, Geo here, that's got a really nice setup. I mean, we're kind of ready for that one to explode.
The poor stepsister is CXW. Same industry, not as good a company.
Right. That's set up to go too.
but should also do, and actually, man, I missed that. It's a nice little move above the 200-day yesterday.
That would have been a pretty good entry there even a couple days ago, right off that wedge.
Yeah, would have been.
A couple weeks ago. Well, it might give you another pullback. I mean, we've got a primary secondary set up here, so it's looking.
Yeah.
Maybe we
And
make a
again,
reversion.
there's room to run. I mean, this thing was like 10 points higher during the first Trump term.
True that. Yeah, it's the you know, the less wealthy stepsister for sure. And then lastly, I mean, that call out on OKLO, man, that thing was just epic as well. You know, again, it's another theme. We've kind of hit the high road on this thing. We're waiting to see if it pulls back for reversion, but this one's it hasn't been around as long as we'd like in, you know, an extended range, so to speak. It IPO'd back here in 21, so can we say maybe this might end up getting market structure attack and get some capitalization around here? It might. You know, I mean, the cup and handle pretty much finished its move here, so it's, yeah, we're likely to pull back here to like $20. But if I'm wrong, this thing's got one hellacious bull move out of coming out, and I'm going to borrow this block to show you what I mean here. You know, you take this parabolic and then stick this above the range. Yowzer. So a pullback would be awesome if it consolidated and held $20. I mean, 30.50 is a pretty easy shot. So don't ignore this one. It's still got plenty of upside potential, but let it consolidate first before we start jumping into some long callouts on this thing. But long term, I think I like this thing a little bit more. And we're just getting into the opening stages of what the perspective energy consumption would be from AI here. We're not like fully turned on yet with this draw, but once things start to swing and that starts to influence the way the world moves, yeah, you betcha we're in the right sector.
Yep.
All right, let me get into a couple other things I was looking at. So Tesla earnings, boy, was not a disappointment. Got long, but I think we got a little bit of an overshoot here. We hit liquidity and backed off pretty quick. Are we kind of set up for a reversion target to like 148, 145, somewhere in that neighborhood? Probably, just kind of looking at this breakover. But pay attention here. I'm going to start looking for a wedge here first before I would call and condemn a pullback here, or condemn it for a pullback here. So keep an eye out for this to give us a little descending wedge. And then if we can kind of see a breakout move set up on this thing, maybe, you know, kind of take this as the grain of salt. Maybe we can start to trend from here, but I think a pullback is more likely. So
be very careful with this one. If she wins,
yeah,
he's public enemy number 2.
That's it. That's you said it. I mean, I don't want to get political and say, you know, we're looking at the potential for a dictator to take over, but that's kind of a move a dictator would make.
Well, but I mean, it's. I mean, just listen to what people have said.
Right.
You know, they're saying things about Elon Musk where if I were Elon Musk, I would not be feeling safe if those things were being said about me.
Plain and simple. And, you know, I mean, can it be a tit for tat situation? Sure, but essentially the courts is where this is going to play out. And yeah, if they try to bury this guy, I mean, God, what a mess that would make out of Tesla. I mean, X isn't publicly traded, but X would be in trouble. You know, SpaceX, the whole shebang, everything would just kind of be in a, well, for lack of a better way to say it, shitstorm. So, yeah, I don't want to put risk in that yet. And I think short term, I think we're looking for a pullback here, and it'll hinge on the election results for sure. But in the long run, if things remain bullish, it can, you know, give us a beat above 300. But just yeah, be nimble, be very careful with this situation because it's precarious.
And I mean, it also looks double toppy, so
it does. But if it gives me the right pullback and then things start to look good, like maybe the election does play in our favor for Elon here, I'm looking at some debit spread potential for another home run trade going into Q4 earnings. It's kind of setting up that way, so bear with me if you will. Last time I said this, everyone else was bearish. I mean, it was like the Q4 play of the century when it broke out, and I capitalized greatly on that. But this is kind of looking very similar as far as all the fundamental alignment going on with the chart. I think we might have a really good potential Q4 earnings trade. So looking at getting into some debit spreads between about now and mid-December, I think is where I'm going to start looking to enter some of those for some way out of the money home run trades with very, very little risk. I mean, when I made that trade, I opened the position at 4 cents per $5 spread way, way, way ahead of time. And by the time I was selling them, I mean, they were trading at like 250. So yeah, I'm never going to complain about that, ever. That was the lowest risk, highest reward I've ever traded in my life, and it's kind of looking like it might give us another one. So watch Q4 for Tesla, man. I think there's going to be some great things. Going back into a couple of the chips, we kind of plotted out NVIDIA a little bit, kind of getting hung up in this liquidity zone. It's kind of following through with that, but we're looking like we might break and start heading for that 147.60 target after all. Got any take on this? I think the wedge is just about ready to break. We're right at the end of it. I think today or tomorrow we should see something move. And earnings next week. Or no, 20th.
Yeah, I mean, the earnings are going to be important. Looks like it needs a little bit of consolidation here to kind of break out of this. But I mean, to me, this is a name you have to own.
Oh, for sure.
It's the 100-pound gorilla. So nothing I'm seeing here that's a concern.
And I misspoke. Next week, no, the 20th. That's when the earnings are out.
Yeah.
So, post-election, of course, and things looking bullish overall. So we could be seeing something set up for if we break that range. Yeah, I like my analyst target, my self-proclaimed analyst target, but I like the potential for a massive move higher, even better. And dare I say, 160 is kind of in target there eventually if things remain bullish. So for short term, let's see what the earnings tell us. But I think in long term, the earnings are going to tell us something like they did back here. Just saying, there's some parabolic moves potentially set up here. So if we break above this 147.60 area, I think 160 is a pretty valid target for the exit on that one. So stay tuned. Stay tuned into the earnings, and then I think there's potential for a run-up going up to earnings in the meantime to hit that short-term target, and then eventually the earnings will tell us where we're going to be. But yeah, keep in mind though, they put a hell of a lot of money into AI, so they're still feeling a bit of the sting for that as a headwind. But I think that'll eventually unwind. Let's just say that. Mr. Soft, kind of a similar scenario, but we're not quite outside of our regression line on that wedge yet. We're just kind of consolidating in this area. Earnings a little, more close at hand here, being tomorrow. Yep. That's going to be the bigger fish, and I think NVIDIA will probably make a sympathetic play on earnings from Mr. Soft here, and then eventually, if we get into the bull trend, we get a half measured move, short-term target like 440, 444.
Whoa.
Got upset, so
I guess he likes Microsoft.
That's what the team is for. She's like Microsoft. You heard it, guys. Give me 1 second. She's going to keep barking. Sorry. At any rate, I think we've got some potential for some good trades going into this earnings call. And would I be an option seller at this rate? Not yet. I think there's going to be too much risk in there, and you're going to have to be nimble because, again, there's a lot of money sunk into AI, and that might kind of project possible pullback too. So just be ready to be nimble. But I'm still bullish generally on Microsoft, but I'm careful with this when I see this setup with a wedge. The regression line is going to be kind of the line in the sand where we want to wait and see what the decision is first before we jump in on that. So don't trade the setup, trade the break. That's all I can say on that one. Couple other kind of weird ones here. We got LRCX was one that someone asked me about last week in a comment.
Yeah, so they came out after. I don't know. Oh, let's see. They came out after ASML and announced slightly better earnings. The result wasn't great, but I mean, it looks like there's some. If you wanted to go long, I mean, there's some obvious lows here in that kind of 70. Well, I mean, that 71 kind of 40-ish area.
You break into a 2-hour chart here. So I mean, through the earnings call, we were pretty adamant about finding the liquidity zone. We picked it off pretty good. Now we're just sort of waiting to see if this trend follows. So short term, we got potentially a break for a 1-for-1 and maybe a target of about $82 out of this thing. But so far, you know, TA says it's likely to follow through with that. It was kind of a lackluster earnings call, really. But I think potentially we're going to follow through with some at least consolidation in this range, and that gets us back to about where the mean of this previous consolidation was anyway. So TA and fundamentals would kind of align on that to where, yeah, we'll kind of ooze on up to the next resistance level, I think. But be aware, that 2-hour chart does look a little like a triple top, doesn't it? Yeah, let's wait and see what we get. So beat this reversion pivot here around 77. If we break out above that, that's probably our key right there. So if we invalidate this triple top and we turn it into a wedge, you know, first target is going to be about 78.90, and then second target would be following through a full measured move to like 81.40. So it's got some potential to give us a good swing, but this is where you're going to have to be a little nimble. So when you see a triple top, don't just jump in long on the thing. Everybody else did, it looks like. But this is where liquidity will be grabbed right about $78. If it breaks that, cool, we got a good shot higher. Should I even mention AMD, or are we just still waiting on that thing?
Which one?
AMD.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't quite give us a full.
I mean, they just pulled an undercut and rally at the 200-day. I mean, it's never been my favorite semi, but I mean, if someone was going to buy it, this wouldn't be a bad spot.
True enough. And, you know, we're right up on top of the 200 MA right here, and we're right above the key liquidity zone. We got denied the bearish move that we're looking at potentially here. So far so good. The bulls are taking it for at least a reversion. We're looking for like 165 being a short-term target, kind of oozing its way up there for now. Do we potentially see a trend above that? Maybe. You know, let's stick a pivot at 165, and I'll show you what I mean here. Dun, dun, dun. Close enough. Go to a weekly chart. So 165 is about the mean of this entire consolidation in a weekly, and we still have potential to push above that, finish, you know, going back to our previous high as a liquidity area here. But if you print this as primary is here, secondary would take us right to a reversion of this previous trend about 180. And then if we still, you know, get a nice kick out of the election, AI, and everything kind of aligns, we get a really good Microsoft earnings. This will play sympathetic. There's potential for a run to that 183.90 still in play, but I'm a little bit less convinced until we get outside of this move here. So maybe I might have to eat my words on that, but so far I'll leave it on the chart We'll see if it proves itself or not. But I mean, we've been pretty accurate with this stuff before, but this is a time where things are a little less clear. So let's wait and see what happens at 165 and go from there.
Likes it.
Well, they both like it. I apologize if that's super loud on the YouTube side, guys. But these guys.
Should we look at like Chewy stock or something just to make
You know what?
happy?
Maybe. Let's look at Chewy. I've loved Chewy. That's a great company. Now that I mention it, it's HWY, right? Yeah. I mean, they were so awesome when my old dog passed away. I mean, it was just incredible how kind they were with that. They sent flowers and a card, guys. How many companies do that? You know, that gets me in the feels. But you know, feelings and emotions, they don't trade stocks very well. But if you're looking for a good company to go into eventually, my phone's starting to ring. We're looking for a reversion trade back down here to about $26. It's pretty obvious. Sorry, I muted my phone, but the ringer didn't get muted. Let me get some dope out here. I forgot to extend this liquidity zone. I talked about these guys a couple weeks ago, and you know, we pretty much followed through with the target trade. It made that 1-for-1 or pretty damn close. Now we're pulling the reversion trade. If we can hold liquidity here, find support around $25. I like a long around there, but for now, it's been a decent short, coming back through this 2750 pivot and going for that liquidity zone. So I'm going to start saying probably in the next few days here, things might start to turn around. And, you know, we've had our earnings call back here on the 28th of August there. And I think maybe we got a pretty good shot at finding support in that mean, kind of giving that half back from that earnings blast, you know. I don't know if I would short it to 25, but I would be looking there to get long. Just my opinion. I gotta still say I love the company, but I don't let my heart lead me into a trade ever. It's all pure science, guys. So just be nimble if you're going to try and get long, and that's going to be where I'd be looking. And then as far as options income on this thing goes, if I were to wheel trade this thing, it'd probably yield close to 8%, which is less than ideal for my wheel trade. I love to yield stuff like 15 to 20% if I can. Not the best wheel trade candidate, but a solid one for a long term if you're looking to, you know, invest in this thing for years and years to come. Market structure's kind of had its way with it. We're in that second consolidation phase, and if we're gonna trend, this is where we're gonna start looking. Probably within the beginning of Q4 here, beginning of Q1 here, we'll see some potential for a swing into a trend. For now, I think I would rather, get in a better deal, possibly into like between 23 and 25 would be a good area to look for long-term entries on this thing, rather than try to jump into it here and make it up with option sales. Getting to the point on option sales, if you wanted to talk a little bit about wheel trading, one that Mr. Greenberg turned me on to from last week. Let me pull it up here. This is interesting. It's a company called Bitfarms. They're a Bitcoin miner, but
what's the symbol? I may own that one.
BITF.
Oh, no, I don't own that one.
The yield on the options chain for this thing is telling me potentially if you're nimble and you can swing trade options with next week expiration, you could own this thing for free inside of 6 weeks with the premium you would earn on it, which is pretty damn good. I failed to sell puts on this thing when I wanted to. I had limit orders set; they never filled. Kicking myself now because I should have just went long equity and then sold puts anyway, and then walked it into selling calls now. But I think we're probably going to stay in range unless Bitcoin breaks 70K, and then this thing will take off with it. So
I think Bitcoin could take off And I mean, and this also could be a Trump type trade.
Yep.
So I own calls on BTCL. I also own IREN, Mount Mara. Unfortunately, I don't own MSTU. I sold my calls when it was at 49.
I mean,
Now it's at 88.
I mean, yeah, that was a hell of a parabolic thing too. I mean, it was prudent to take profit when you did, so I wouldn't complain about that.
No, I mean, just micro strategy is just,
Yeah,
I mean, it's defying all logic and reason.
and that's the time to where you gotta be prudent. I mean, if you were staying long in it, cool. Yeah, the market can remain irrational and keep on just running that thing to the moon and possibly to Neptune for all we care. But in the meantime, we've been around trading for a while, and we're good enough at it to sustain ourselves with it. And we don't make that money leaving stuff in speculative modes like that. We tend to be a little more prudent with our profit taking when it comes to that. So
and it also comes down to your situation. I mean,
yes,
I'm 55 years old. I'm not going to take massive risks and potentially lose money. But one of my kids who might have a much smaller portfolio, yeah, I mean, YOLO the micro strategy, that's fine.
yeah. I mean, nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you got time to risk it, and you're not getting into a position where you don't want to risk a whole bunch because you might not be able to. I mean, get in your 70s, you might get dementia or something and totally lose touch with the market. Not the time to be taking that kind of risk. I'm only 46, but I'm getting to a point where I'm taking less high risk trades and more prudent trades myself. So yeah, it is affecting me. But then again, as long as my brain continues to function the way it does, I will definitely be day trading like a madman. And I've discovered some things along the way that are really, really awesome that I'm going to start teaching when it comes to price action in ways that I don't think have been thought of before. I got something kind of up my sleeve here. And I'm beginning to talk to our members about it. And it's one of the price action strategies that will have absolutely nothing to do with being able to mold into long-term price action. This is just for scalping. So it's not something I would teach for market analysis for long-term swings and trades like we do here. But for day trading, it is phenomenal. And it has to do with a Renko chart. So I'll get into that with the members, but I'm going to keep it proprietary until I figure out all the little details that I want to learn on, because I'm still adapting this strategy. But holy smokes, it's really really killing it. So like for stuff like MSTU, if I was to day trade it, yeah, that would be killer. But again, I'm going to rather day trade it, and that's the prudence in it, is to day trade it. If something's parabolic like that, and if you end up losing sleep overnight holding it, it's not something you want to hold overnight. So taking profit when we did, that was ideal. We've done what we wanted to do with it. We're happy there. We prudently took profit on that. But continuing to day trade it, yeah, no brainer. Definitely day trade the living crap out of that stuff. The more volatile, the better. So definitely, if you're into day trading, those are the stocks you focus on. You look at what's in play, what's going parabolic, what's going nuts, and you're just as quick to short it as you are to long. So stuff like that will pay off. But in the meantime, I can make some pretty prudent income on something like BITF. And like I said, with the right option strategy with wheel trading, you could own this thing for free within 6 weeks. I'm not kidding. This is one of those. They're rare. Typically when I find them, or when somebody else finds them for me in this case, they're stock trading around $2. They got enough volatility to have open interest in the weekly options chain. And they have a weekly options chain, so that proves they're volatile enough to be within reason for making income. And the other part is the swings from high to low on those options prices play really well with power hour and with opening range. So if price is like volatile in the morning, volatile in the afternoon, but the midday is just kind of flat, it's perfect because you go and you sell into that heightened implied volatility from the opening or power hour. Sell to open options there. Midday, when it starts to flatten out, you could literally the next day buy to close those, wait for power hour, sell them again, and you're overlapping like nickels and dimes here on the contracts. But on a $2 stock, nickels and dimes pay for it very quickly. It sometimes will take you even less than 6 weeks to own something like this for free. So learn that strategy. Wheel trading is fun. When you mess with a penny stock like this, it's really fun. Anyway, I think we're about an hour in. Unless we got anything else we want to throw at it.
I think that's it. Just be careful. I think the best trade we got coming up is volatility crush.
Yes.
Barring some massive event, I think the election comes and goes and volatility comes way, way down.
Agreed. It might be a good time to do some UVixie puts or something, and in the meantime,
we're getting there.
We're getting close.
And certainly some SPY calendar spreads.
Yes. And then lastly, I'm still not in a position on TNA. I'm still sitting pretty with the cash on my account from that one. I might be selling some puts if things dip quickly. If not, I'll just end up going long equity and starting to roll into covered calls and logging some puts to get into the other position. Either way, that thing has been I was intent on making that a zero cost within a fiscal year, and here I am from March until about the beginning of October here. I own it for free, so that's pretty cool. And it's a technicality because it beat my running total, but you know what I mean. So now if I enter it, I have to average that, but still, TNA has been awesome for using a leveraged ETF to make income on options, and I think I'm still long-term looking at these leveraged ETFs that you manage to be very, very lucrative for that same strategy. And once the bid-ask is tightened up on it enough, I'm in. I will be doing exactly what I do with TNA with those, for sure. I'll be teaching others how to do it too. So stay tuned. We'll get into the details with that eventually, and we're gonna show you guys how to really capitalize on other people's speculation when it comes to selling options. So until then, thanks again. If you guys want us to look at a ticker anytime, you can throw us a comment. And Quasar Marcus just commented, go get that BITF. Yeah, it's going to be a chasing game at this point for me, but I did scalp it a little the other day, so I'll live with it. But yeah, looking down the road, I think we're going to have some really interesting things coming. And if you stay tuned, tell your friends, get our viewership up. We'll feel better about ourselves, and we'll do it more often. Until then, thanks again, guys. We'll see you on Thursday.